You know, there's this odd thing that occurs with some folks. They step into a space and pick up on everything. The subtle strain between buddies, the concealed sorrow lurking beneath a grin. And society tells us it's a talent, right? This knack for spotting what slips past others. But today, I'd like to propose something else entirely, that this sharp insight could be the riskiest trait you might ever carry. I'm not referring to peril in the usual way, like bodily injury. No, this is something much more insidious, much more ruinous. It's the hazard of growing so attuned that you can't join in the blissful obliviousness that lets most folks navigate life with a measure of calm. Ever observed people at a gathering? Truly observed. It's all a performance, really. The guidelines are unspoken, innate. You inquire about someone's well-being, they reply, "Great." And you both act as if that's the full story. You praise the organizer. You chuckle at quips that barely land. You offer knowing nods to tales you've encountered previously. It's an unspoken pact to skim the surface, to sustain the harmony, to avoid probing too far. Then there's you, the observer who pierces the facade. You catch the spouse who tenses just a bit at her partner's words. You detect the co-worker aching with solitude amid a crowd of pals. You sense the unease flowing through the air like a hidden wave. And that's when the real threat emerges. Once those details register, they're etched in. You can't erase them. Even worse, your mere existence turns into a reflection others dread facing. Allow me to explain. When you discern so keenly, when you detect the undercurrents in everyday exchanges, you're highlighting what the group has collectively chosen to overlook, and that rubs people the wrong way, deeply so. Not out of malice or ignorance, but because your clarity challenges the framework that keeps their world steady. Picture it like this. Society resembles a theatrical production. Each person plays their assigned role. The thriving executive, the caring parent, the steadfast companion. These are scripts, outfits we don. The show runs smoothly as long as actors remain committed. But you, with your acute perception, are like a spectator who leaps on stage mid-scene and declares, quote 1. You can guess how that goes over, so the initial peril is solitude, not the everyday solitude of a sparse social circle. Something deeper, the alienation of inhabiting a reality utterly apart from those nearby. You're conversing in a dialect no one else grasps. You're viewing a landscape invisible to the rest. The cruel twist? The sharper your vision, the deeper your isolation grows. I knew someone once, a woman we'll name Sarah, who possessed this remarkable gift for gauging souls. She'd enter a place and instantly tell the authentic from the act, the suffering from the feigned composure, the reliable from the secretive. And what became of her? She watched her intimate bonds dissolve, not due to harshness or criticism, but because her company left others feeling stripped bare. They couldn't sustain their easy pretenses around her. Acquaintances would remark, "You're overwhelming. You overanalyze it all and pick at wounds. Why not unwind and enjoy?" Yet she couldn't, for clear-sightedness isn't a toggle you flip. It's akin to instructing a listener to tune out noise altogether. Once that perceptual skill sharpens, it's constant, ever active, revealing what the world would rather bury. And here's the next risk. When you grasp a scenario's raw essence, when you uncover the truths simmering below, you're confronted with a harsh dilemma. Voice it or hold back. Speak up, and you invite backlash, often emotional rather than overt. You'll be labeled pessimistic, hypersensitive, a stirrer of discord. Folks will claim you're inventing issues, projecting ill intent onto neutral moments, refusing to let sleeping dogs lie. Yet silence comes at a cost, too. If you suppress your insights and feign ignorance, you drift from your core self. Each overlooked truth, each endorsement of a distorted narrative you know is off, erodes your faith in your own senses. Gradually, this breeds an inner fracture. One side clings to reality, the other feigns blindness. It's a subtle form of unraveling. I remember, a few years back, I found myself in a conference room where the group was patting themselves on the back for the supposed success of a key initiative, yet I could spot instantly that disaster was looming. The red flags were glaring. The artificial excitement, the sidestepping of tricky issues, the way folks' gazes would dart elsewhere whenever tough inquiries surfaced. Yet, when I softly proposed that we might want to probe some worrisome trends, the reaction wasn't debate, no logical pushback, just raw, protective animosity. And that leads straight into the third risk, the slyest of them all. When your vision is sharp and others refuse to acknowledge it, they frequently direct their frustration toward you. Not deliberately, maybe. They don't plot to cast you as the bad guy. But instinctively, without thinking, they start viewing you as the issue, as though your insight is somehow generating the troubles you're just noticing. I term this the kill the bearer of bad news effect. When somebody highlights that the leader is stark naked, the audience doesn't applaud the honesty. Instead, they lash out at the revealer for shattering the cozy illusion they'd all been clinging to. Your insight turns into a hazard, and hazards get neutralized or reined in. I've observed this cycle play out over and over. The one with keen perception ends up tagged. They're overly pessimistic. They're stirring up trouble. They're unreliable. They should chill out. They're overly suspicious. See the pattern? Every tag shifts the blame to the observer, away from the reality being observed. It's a clever shield, in truth. If they can persuade you that your viewpoint is faulty, they sidestep examining the actual situation. But what no one mentions is this. The fourth peril might be the most crippling. As you keep soaking up the moods and buried realities of those nearby, as you constantly tune into the unsaid and unprocessed, you start muddling what's truly yours. Your personal emotions tangle with theirs. You enter a space feeling steady and exit gripped by unexplained worry, sorrow, or rage. And you can't tell if it's originating from you or if you've just sopped it up from the surroundings, like a cloth-absorbing liquid. The toll is immense. Picture always doubting which ideas are genuinely yours, never sure if the sentiment surging through you is personal or borrowed from the neighbor. It's akin to straining to catch your own words amid a chorus of overlapping chatter. In time, you could even lose sense of your original tone. Folks I've talked to who live this often echo the same sentiment. I sense myself fading, with bits of me shrinking while echoes of others expand. And this isn't mere metaphor, it's a genuine mental hazard. When the lines dividing you from them grow too thin, when you're ingesting far too much sans proper safeguards, you risk drifting from your core self, your essence. You might wonder now, this seems pretty bleak. No upside for the sharp-eyed? Well, here's the twist. The peril I outline only bites when it's unwitting, when you fail to grasp the dynamics, when you assume you're unraveling or defective. But the moment awareness dawns, when you recognize your sharpness isn't a defect, but a distinct form of perception, the landscape shifts. Not that the insight vanishes, but your stance toward it evolves. You grasp that you aren't duty-bound to rescue all from their blind spots. You don't have to flag every concealed fact or mend every overlooked flaw. Truth is, the core threat isn't the perception alone. It's the urge to act on every glimpse. The notion that spotting an issue means you fix it. Feeling another's hurt demands you mend it. Detecting a team's mess requires you sort it. That's when chaos truly erupts, since you're shouldering burdens beyond your scope. Let me paint a picture. Suppose you're strolling past a stream and detect the flow is murky. Your sight confirms it plainly. Others, strolling by, appear oblivious or indifferent. At that point, options arise. You could dive in and attempt to purify it manually, only agitating the silt further, draining your energy on a futile chase. Or you could just note the murkiness, maybe advise holding off on sipping until it settles and press onward. The stream will purify in due time under proper circumstances. Your desperate meddling won't aid. In fact, it'll worsen the murk. Such discernment must pair with wise restraint for true clarity. Realizing that not every observation demands your action is key. Yet, there's this intriguing twist. When you cease the urge to correct every issue that catches your eye, when you ease into mere observation without the drive to alter or dominate, your insight sharpens even further. Beyond that, folks start feeling more at ease in your company since you're not subtly pressuring them to match your viewpoint or adjust to fit your understanding. Picture it this way: encountering someone who grasps you fully, yet doesn't insist on your transformation, who notices your challenges without rushing to save you, who gets your anxieties without pushing you to confront them on their timeline. Doesn't that bring a sense of liberation? Like you can finally exhale. That's the true potential of sharp perception when handled well, not as a tool to combat others' unawareness, but as a boon shared via your mere existence. You take them in wholly, and through that gaze, you grant them space to remain just as they are. This isn't about endorsing all behaviors or ignoring real troubles. It's about ceasing to treat their lack of awareness as your own mission. Let me emphasize this point. I'm not advocating for detachment or apathy. I'm not urging you to withhold empathy or ignore true hardship. Rather, I'm highlighting the gap between empathetic insight and obsessive correction, between keen observation and assuming ownership over what you observe. The risk in noticing what escapes others isn't the noticing itself, but your response to it. If you wield it to distance yourself, to foster a sense of superiority, or to rationalize withdrawing, it surely turns hazardous. If you deploy it to criticize their oversight, to embarrass them for their unawareness, or to penalize their ignorance, it certainly ruins connections and leaves you isolated. However, if you cradle your insight gently, if you observe without clinging, notice without manipulating, comprehend without insisting, then your awareness transforms into something profound. It evolves into an environment where people can slowly awaken on their terms, in their moments, free from coercion, prodding, or criticism. From years of observing those gifted with such perceptive abilities, I've gleaned this. The deepest pain afflicts not those with the keenest sight, but those who fail to shield themselves amid their visions. They soak up all without barriers, shoulder every load they detect, and drain their energy attempting to rouse a world unready for awakening. Those who flourish, who harness their insight without it overwhelming them, have grasped a vital lesson. They've mastered existing within the world, yet apart from it. They discern sharply without being devoured by their discoveries. They delve profoundly without dissolving into others' realities. They uphold a deliberate separation, not the chill of retreat, but the safeguard of firm limits. How does one cultivate this? It begins with genuine solitude, not mere isolation, but mental uncluttering. Moments free from absorbing others' feelings, ideas, or woes. Periods to calm, much like that silted water we mentioned, until you distinguish your own emotions from those you've adopted on behalf of others. It builds by cultivating faith in your insights without letting them dictate your moves. Indeed, you might spot turmoil in a friend's union. You could detect profound discontent in a co-worker's life. You may sense imbalance in your family's dynamics. These could all ring true. But the core issue isn't the accuracy of your view, it's how you apply this knowledge. Frequently, the smartest choice is restraint, simply providing room for reality to surface naturally. This isn't inertia or indifference, it's sagacity, rooted in knowing that transformations occur when individuals are prepared, not when you deem it necessary. Challenges resolve under favorable circumstances, not on your imposed schedule. And awareness grows at its inherent rhythm, seldom as swift as we desire. So, we've reached the essence. The peril of perceiving what eludes others is tangible. It can alienate you, wear you down, provoke defensive backlash, and disconnect you from your core. Yet it needn't be so, not if you bear your insight mindfully, not if you build resilience to observe sans the itch to mend, not if you stay faithful to your discernment while honoring others' paths to enlightenment. The boon and the burden are one and the same. The only matter is whether you'll master wielding the boon, with sufficient insight to ensure it doesn't turn into a burden. Whether you'll cultivate the tolerance, limits, and inner understanding required to express yourself honestly without getting overwhelmed by your own insight. And maybe above all, whether you'll encounter fellow souls who perceive the world as you do, because such individuals are out there. You see, there are others navigating this peculiar realm of noticing what escapes the majority, of detecting the concealed, of grasping the unvoiced. Once you connect with them, once someone truly recognizes you without demanding you dim your sensitivity for their ease, that's the moment the risk starts shifting into something wondrous, as you grasp that isolation isn't your fate. In the end, you're not deranged. You're not damaged. You're merely alert in a realm where most remain in slumber. And there are fellow alert ones as well. And in unison, without pushing or demanding or haste, you can create room for awareness to unfurl bit by bit, much like the first light of day easing across a quiet town at rest. This is the promise amid the peril, that your sharp vision, when nurtured thoughtfully, evolves from a solitary weight into a gentle beacon extended to those around you, softly and steadily, letting them draw near on their own terms. If they ever choose to, and should they never, that's their choice. It isn't your role to rouse them. Your role is merely to stay vigilant, to continue observing with precision even as you master the art of coexisting calmly with your observations. The threat is genuine, yet so is the potential to embrace awareness without letting it devour you, to gaze profoundly without sinking beneath the depths of what you've uncovered, to bear your perception as a blessing, not a hex. And that, dear companions, that is the essence of thriving with unwavering vision in a society that chooses to avert its gaze.